Hi, Jude. Welcome.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Okay, let me quickly introduce you. My guest, Jude Sandvall, who is one of our summit speakers on the summit Conversations with Men for Men and Women, and also co-author in our upcoming book, which is Relationships for Men by Men, which I must tell you, Jude, I am so proud of this book and about the content and what it's going to bring to everybody. So thank you so very much for your contribution. I'm looking forward to discuss some great excerpts from your chapter tonight.
Yeah, I'm excited to discuss it too, but I'm also excited to read what the other men. I only have one part of that, so I'm really excited to read all of the rest of what the other men have written as well, because I know you've got some colleagues that I've done some work with too. So I'm excited to read what they've got to say, because I know they're phenomenal men.
Absolutely. And you know what the thing is? I've seen the growth even from the summit, because, it's a hard thing for men to talk about these things. And my brief to everybody was, how did you mess up? Are you willing to talk about it? And what are you doing better now? I mean, that's like a big ask, hey? And so I think like the summit was like a stage one, like, yes, we're willing to talk about it, but we're not quite used to it, but we are talking about it. And then there's the next, and now it's the book, and people are even more transparent in the book. So, and I know from the previous two books in the series that a lot of the authors have said to me that they have gotten to a whole new level of vulnerability and therefore healing and growth just through writing this down. Did you also have that experience from writing down your journey?
Every day is is a growth experience for me, for sure. And I don't even feel like it's messing up anymore. I feel like it's feedback.
Yes.
There's that business proposition that there's no failure, there's just feedback. So if and I think that's a great mindset to have, because if we're looking at things from that perspective all the time, we don't get into that shame spiral or guilt or feeling not enough, etc. That there's just
And that whole
feedback,
imposter syndrome
imposter
story.
syndrome, all of that stuff. So if we can reframe that, it's not easy. It's taken me years, decades even, to get to that mindset. But for example, yesterday I forgot to do something for my girlfriend, and so that could have easily thrown me into a shame spiral, but it didn't. It was feedback, right? There's something that I can improve, and I apologized. I just was that I'm sorry, and I hope that you'll forgive me, and I'll do better next time. That's refreshing, because it helps strengthen a relationship. It helps her see that I'm human. I'm not perfect. I'm vulnerable. I can apologize. There's lots of opportunity in things that you might otherwise believe as failure. It can be feedback if you'll take it and use it in the right direction. And that's really what I tried to get at with the book, is taking, or with my chapter of the book, is taking some of these triggers that come up and these emotions and feelings that come up, and utilizing them in a positive manner.
Yeah, your chapter is quite different from the others, because it has these step by step instructions of which are very valid. There's a way. Somebody has gone to the place of analyzing it and coming up with specific solutions, and it's workable solutions, and it's set out beautifully. So yeah, I'm really excited for everybody to hear it. But also, you know what, Jude, what you just described is exactly what was the brief for the book and the summit originally. Because what have we done before? And now that willingness to, it's just a human failure. Let me apologize. Let me show up. Let me do better. Let me reframe it. Let me call it a teaching moment. All of that is part of where we are now, from the opposite from before. Deny that there was a mistake. pretend that the bus drove over my homework. That innocence instead of owning it and learning from it. And that's a huge lesson in itself, I think.
Yes, absolutely. And unfortunately, sometimes it takes a significant life event for us to wake up to that. I know that it did for me, and that's unfortunate. It's difficult, but that's just the way that it is, mostly because we've learned this stuff and these behaviors through our early childhood experiences, or our childhood experiences, our early adult life experiences. And we're just kind of saddled with those until something wakes us up and we go, oh man, I don't want this anymore. This is too painful, or whatever whatever it is. And I've had many of those moments, but I do a lot of work with divorced or divorcing men, and that was my experience, and it is a lot of the same experience with a lot of the men that I work with. But once we consciously know that, then it's really incumbent upon us to start doing the work and making that effort to do that. And don't get me wrong, it doesn't happen overnight. And I didn't there was a time where I would have handled yesterday a completely different way, and it would have been a fight or a challenge or a breakup or something terrible, right? And it's been years of figuring that out. So those listening and maybe reading the chapter in the book and the step-by-step process, it's baby steps. Take one step at a time and be proud of where you're at and the progress that you're making. And I'm a coach, and that's why the chapter was written in that way. Is we want to have progress towards what our intentions are, but we know that if we've been involved in any kind of sporting event or maybe a creative endeavor, that takes a little bit of time and a little bit of practice before you get really good at it.
It's quite interesting that we are very willing to invest in learning business skills and sports skills and creative skills. But when it comes to personal skills, we go like, no, I should just know this. And then we wing it. I want to read your first excerpt. So before I get to that, I do want to say to you that you are going to love the content of this book, because, I mean, these guys have talked so honestly. The absolute honesty of what's gone wrong and owning it. So I know you're going to love it. Okay, let me go to your excerpt. And there's a reason why I'm really happy to talk about this subject. I listened to a podcast last week, a fairly popular one, and in which the host and the person she was talking to were actually being very derogatory about the concept of us having to go to our childhood in order to understand ourselves. So, and that's such a shame, because if we say it's too hard, or it's like, let's not deal with that childhood stuff anymore, then we keep on suppressing it. We're back to where we are. But once we deal with it, we are going to be empowered. So let's read a little bit from your chapter. Here we go. Right. Emotions tells you a great deal about the life events which have formed you. You tend to react to the world according to certain triggers or reminders of past thoughts or experiences. But what served you in the past may not serve you well now. So experiencing fear of your aunt's cat might have kept you from being clawed as a child, but it's no longer helpful if you have the same fear of every cat you meet now you're an adult. Okay, emotions tells you a great deal about the life events that have formed you. It's like, this is like so my favorite topic. Just get my light a bit darker here. Oh, wait, no, that's very dark. It's going much darker here. Okay. Yeah, I mean, you're talking about cats, and cats are my second most favorite topic. So it's a win-win for me. That concept, Jude, I mean, it's so spot on, of the experience, the emotions you're feeling now, the triggers you're feeling now, they tell you about what happened to you when in your formative years.
Yep, absolutely. So again, if we use this around So I'm a serial entrepreneur. So a lot of the stuff that I do in the way that I approach these things and with the dads that I work with is working backwards from intentions and results. And if you're not getting the results that you want, then working backwards and trying to understand why that is incredibly important. And so if you're afraid of the cats, then there's something that's coming up that's triggering and that's a really kind of surface level benign example that I've used in the realm of divorce or in the realm of relationships, et cetera, that gets much deeper. And I think the last time you and I talked, we talked about adaptive behaviors and that we learn in childhood in order to survive, particularly if you had a traumatic or abusive childhood and you take those into your adult life, and those don't serve you necessarily in your relationships that you have, romantic or otherwise, going forward. And again, like I said, takes maybe something big, a big event in your life for you to pay attention to those. But if you start to be consciously aware of those triggers, all of the choices that we make are driven by these emotions that we have every single day. So if we're having fearful, anxious, scared, et cetera, feelings and emotions all through the day, we're making our decisions based upon those. So working backwards to really try to understand, and if that means you need to go deeper into the childhood, like you said, then that's good. But I will say that there's a fine line and there's a balance between doing that therapeutic work. You don't need to go into every single childhood traumatic experience in order to work some of these things out. Some of these things are all packaged up into a box that might be abandonment, right? Or some other challenge that you went through in your childhood that you can unpack a little bit, but then going forward, right? Taking the actions is the big thing to make the change. And one of the things that I coach the divorced or divorcing dads about during divorce is there's really only one thing during this traumatic, difficult, and challenging time that we can control as men. And that's the difficult thing about going through divorce, is it's really uncertain, and we don't know what's going to be happening, and it's chaotic, and that for our masculine natures is very, very challenging. So trying to control the outcomes of that is virtually impossible. Literally, it's impossible to do.
I want to tell you, it's the same for women, hey?
It is, yeah, no, absolutely, no doubt. It isn't certain, but I think I feel like women's natures are a little bit more predisposed to be able to deal with chaos better than men. Men are very linear. They want to have an end goal. They want, they're driven to a direction, right? So chaos and uncertainty is very difficult for men to deal with. But the one thing we can control during this time frame is our emotions. That is pretty much literally the only thing that we can control, and not our soon-to-be exes emotions or feelings, but only our emotions. So that's why it's a really great opportunity with the men that I work with that come to me and they're like, my emotions are all over the place. This is difficult. This is the most pain I've ever felt. This is horrible. And I say, well, that's great. This is an opportunity, which is counterintuitive a lot of the time, because they're thinking, I don't want to experience this at all, which goes to numbing and maybe trying to hide from this stuff. But and this also goes to your point that more men are getting the help or seeking coaching in order to work through this and do it a better way. And the other opportunity in this is modeling that for their children. So I work exclusively with dads, in modeling this behavior and this ability and learning these skills through this challenging time is a remarkable opportunity to model for your children getting through one of the most stressful, difficult time frames in a healthy way. And so that's why I'm so proud of the dads that get help and that go through this and work on this and are conscientious about this and figuring this out.
Because I was going to comment, but then we've got a question which is 100% exactly what I was going to comment on. What happens if we do not remember the past or the event that caused the trigger? I think you sort of answered it, and it's also something that I know from my experience, that You don't have to unpack every single thing, because sometimes you can just look at the trigger, because a certain trigger, even for clients who don't remember what happened in childhood, which is a lot, and a lot of our trauma is hidden from us. So we look at the trigger, and from a trigger we can actually work backwards, and we know that this is an abandonment trigger, or so it doesn't matter if we don't remember it, because the trigger is our friend.
Right. Yeah. And so our bodies are conduits of all of this. Our bodies are going to bring this stuff up, and it's different for everybody. So when we're talking about triggers, they're going to manifest somewhere in our body. It could be a tightness in your chest. It could be you get sweaty palms. I mean, it could be some kind of physiological change. Throat, gets tight, or if somebody says something and you just get tensed up. So it's just paying attention and being that quiet observer of what's happening in your body is incredibly important, because then what it allows you to do is just say, oh, okay, well, I'm having this emotion and I can stop. You don't necessarily need to know like what the background is, at least initially and immediately, but just knowing that you're having a reaction to something is the first step to doing that. And then having that emotion, it's okay to have that emotion. So maybe that emotion is anger. And this is a really, really misunderstood emotion, anger. It's really good and transformative to have an angry emotion. And the difference between emotions and behaviors is that one is just having that. So having any kind of emotion is just an emotion. It's not positive and it's not negative. It's just an emotion. It's coming up to make you say, oh, hey, Jude. Oh, hey, Louise. Pay attention to this. This is something that I need you to pay attention to. So that's it. And now what you do with that is what's important. If you have an angry outburst, that's an angry behavior, that's probably not going to serve you well. But if you then take the time and whatever your process is, maybe you have a therapist and you talk about it, maybe you have a coach and you talk about it, maybe you journal, maybe you meditate, maybe you've developed a skill after that, that might help you dive into it. And maybe you don't. Maybe you just know that you need to be aware of that. And what you want to do is you want to change your behavior so that you don't react to it. And then and then you develop some sort of skill to go forward, not to react to that, whatever that trigger might be. So totally it could be as easy as that. But just pay attention, right? That's the first step.
Yeah, use it. Thanks, Mitch. That was an awesome question.
Yeah,
I just want to say hi to my friend Zaza. Hi, Zaza. Lovely to see you. Thank you for the like. Remember, guys, we like the likes. So thank you so much, and welcome to everybody watching. I'm so thankful when people give up their valuable time to join us. It's not nice to talk to nobody, right?
Yeah, right. Okay. Well, we're talking to each other, which I never mind talking with you, Louise.
Yes, no, I know it's always going to be a great conversation. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. There's just so much wisdom here. The empathy you show to others is reciprocated when you need it. The people in your life use emotional cues to practice compassion and learn more about us. This understanding is what brings you closer together and builds longer lasting relationships with deep emotional connections. There's a specific reason why I want to talk about this, because we are talking about our book is Relationships for Men by Men. And to talk about empathy, that's not particularly about the first conversation that we're going to be having with men, right?
Well, maybe not. It's maybe a graduate level of emotion or skill, right? But I know a lot of very empathetic men. But I obviously also work in the realm of dads that have children and care so much about children. And so this is the concept of you get what you give. And if you're giving empathy, if you're giving other types of feelings and creating that container, if you will, you're going to get that back. And this was an aha moment in parenting, really, for me, is learning that the environment that I create in my household is going to have a direct impact on my children. So if things aren't really going smooth, or they're acting out, or we're having challenges, it was really a wake-up call to, learn and understand that that was primarily due to whatever mental emotional state I was in. And that could be as much as daily. If I woke up in a bad mood and I just had that energy out there and was putting that off and giving that out, then that's exactly what I'm getting back, is I'm getting back that negative feeling and energy. And so, if you put that into a context of whatever it is, it could be empathy, it could be forgiveness. I talk about empathy in this particular quote that you're stating here, but it could be forgiveness, it could be love, it could be anger, right? If you're putting out anger, you're going to get anger back. So it's that environment that you're creating, and being, again, aware of what your emotions are, aware of what's happening in yourself, and then what you're doing with it. So this kind of segues from that first quote, which is being aware of the emotions, and then what you're doing with those emotions, what choice you're making with that emotion, and what behavior you're choosing to exhibit. And so what behavior are you choosing? Are you choosing empathy? Are you choosing forgiveness? Are you choosing love? Are you choosing something that's going to move you towards what you want yourself? Which I would posit is we all want love deep down, right? Unconditional love. And so are you choosing to move in that direction? And then if so, are you going to see that you're getting that back? You will see that you're getting that back. But, if you're testing this out, try with something like forgiveness.
Yeah. So what we are really getting at here is instead of keep on focusing on what's wrong and what you're not getting, you start focusing on where you want to move to. And when you start giving, first of all, you give yourself empathy, you give yourself forgiveness, you give yourself unconditional love. And the more you start doing that for yourself, the more you are able to do it for other people. And then when you start giving other people empathy and unconditional love, you start getting it back. It's a weird thing, but it does happen.
Absolutely. That's a great point too, Louise. This all has to start with yourself. So forgiveness is a big one. Forgiveness in forgiving yourself about what might happen, or these adaptive behaviors that you have learned through your life, which has led to maybe difficulties and challenges, or divorce, or failed relationships, or whatever it might be. That doing that work and creating that self-love first is absolutely critical, because you can only get as much as you can give yourself. So you can only get as much love as you feel for yourself. You can only get as much forgiveness as you can forgive yourself. So that's the flip side of what we're talking about. And that's an excellent point. It starts with you.
I also think it's quite handy to look at it like this way. You can't really be getting unconditional love from other people until you do it for yourself. And
Amen.
That's another one of those, it's really hard to wrap your head around it, because we really want to be filled up from other people from outside. Give me more, give me more, give me more. And yet we never feel it until we can give it to ourselves.
Well, and this goes back to those adaptive behaviors, and then those thought processes that we automatically have in our heads because of our childhood experiences. And those have all been hardwired into our neural pathways for so long. And then we bring those into our adult life. And we're literally, if we're doing this and learning how to give ourselves unconditional life. So I had a relatively traumatic childhood, and there was abuse. And so those thought processes continue until you undo those and create new neural pathways to give yourself love, or give yourself compassion, or grace, or forgiveness, or empathy, or anything else. And that takes a little bit of time. But what can happen is it changes in how you're thinking. And this is what we do, what you do, what I do in coaching, what therapists often do, in changing that thought process and rewiring those neural pathways to give yourself the love. And you're going to see that slowly after time. And so, but also give yourself some grace. It'll happen a lot faster than you think it will, but it does take time. Because think about having to rewire like a computer system that's been going offline for years or decades, right? You're just taking that time to do that. But as you do it, you start to see things improve, things improve. and then you work on something else. But that's where these triggers come in really as important. Pay attention, like red flags, like, okay, you've done the work on this. Now here's something else. I'd like to think that there's a goal line, right? I used to think there's a goal line. There's not a goal line. This is just life. This is just doing part of the work, and that's a good thing. And so again, if you can reframe that in your mind, is that being a positive, it's just feedback. It's not failure. You're just continuing to just refine yourself, like you do if you became a good athlete or a good musician or good at whatever work you do. That's it just took a little time. It took a little time. It didn't happen in a week or a month or a year. It took a little bit of time of learning and learning and learning.
Yeah, it is that way. Like every little bit that you grow up, you grow to a next stage, and then there's something new, and but now you're able to handle it better because you've done those growth stages. So, but it doesn't mean you're not having, and I think especially imposter syndrome comes up a lot, or dealing with a new kind of loss that you haven't dealt with before. But the basic skills, the basic self-love, the basic self-belief skills, those ones are the ones that helps us through the next level challenges. The next level challenges, the first time when I talked on Facebook, I wanted to die, and it was horrible and terrible.
Right.
And now it's just something that I really love and enjoy, and I can focus on the conversation. I don't have to be worrying about what do I do wrong, when I'm going to say a tense wrong. But I'm telling you, Jude, when Oprah calls me, I'm going to go like, there's going to be a whole new level again. We all go through all of those things. Okay, so let's go to slide number 3 here. When you have your emotions under control, you find your place in the universe. You become happier, more content. You can use these emotions to get to a place where you're better than you ever were before. Didn't I just say that?
Yep, exactly.
Your emotions are nothing more than a response with physical components defined by your history. Your emotions are unique to you and only to you. Humans need emotions to become healthy, happy individuals who feel fulfilled in our lives, in our interactions with those around us. When you have your emotions under control, you find your place in the universe. Why do I think that this is a repeat of
you repeated the first paragraph, but that's fine. It's good to reiterate that, because you will find your place in the universe. You will become more happy and content, and it'll get you. It is amazing, and it is remarkable.
It's so good I had to say it twice.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, so it is a lot about what we've said just now. So I think, why don't we go back to slide 1 again. So we go back to childhood, and we have been triggered from those experiences, and we are re-experiencing those feelings, but we're still experiencing them triggered from our response as the child who originally had them.
Mm-hmm.
And now when we go to slide 3 and we go like, you are supposed to be in control of your emotions, befriend them, if you will. You've got to get used to them and accept them and not fight them anymore. And now you can start to experience those same emotions as an adult, and then they're not a trigger anymore.
Right. Yep, absolutely. And so here's the good news, is that nobody listening has chosen to have these adaptive behaviors. There's just something that is a unique and beautiful design feature of being human that helps us to adapt to life in our situations. And whether, even if you've had the greatest, what we would describe as the greatest childhood, there are going to be adaptive behaviors that helped you get something, a need met that you weren't necessarily having met. And even the most conscientious, caring, kindest, loving parents miss stuff, and then you adapt to it, and that's okay. And then it comes up, and it's going to come up in your life. But if you can pay attention to it again, it's just a red flag saying, hello, do something, and then pay attention to this. And then if you can work on a better reaction to that. And I'll just go back to that example I used yesterday. My initial trigger yesterday, first thing, was like to make an excuse for forgetting, right? That because I knew as a child, if I did that, then it was going to be, I was not going to get the love I wanted, right? My love of one of my parents was conditional upon how I acted, right? How I made that parent happy. And so immediately I was like, oh man, I forgot. And I didn't admit it right away, right? And so I just knew that adaptive behavior was immediate. And look, and I'm doing this all the time with men, all the time, right? Every day we talk about this and all this stuff. And like my initial reaction was that. And then I got to go, okay, well, like, what was that fear? I hung up the phone and I'm like, oh, okay, that was fear of I'm not going to get the love that I want because I didn't behave the right way. And so then what do I need to do? I needed to deal with that emotion. I know what that emotion was about. What behavior what choice do I want to make going forward? Okay, am I going to stay in that fear? No, I wasn't. I'm going to apologize. I'm going to ask forgiveness. And it was it was fine. So I was able to utilize that. And then it was, we hugged and said, great, let's go. We're going to go do our thing tonight. And that was it. Like, it deepened our relationship. So that's where it's an opportunity, because she knows now that I'm responsible for my emotions and my feelings. I'm responsible for when I say I'm going to do something, and I'm responsible if I don't do something, that I'm going to be accountable for that. So, that builds layers of trust and intimacy and all kinds of things, right? In a relationship. And so it was an opportunity. So an opportunity of screwing something up actually turned into being able to deepen our relationship by choosing the correct behavior from the trigger, right? So the initial reaction was not right. It was not good. Okay. But utilizing that behavior and correcting that behavior was something that helps, be a positive.
Yeah, the moment when you don't say the bus drove over my homework. But so,
well, it's not my fault. It's my
happen.
adaptive behaviors. I could have used that one.
It didn't happen. So, I think it's really important to notice that being able to own your mistakes is a sign of maturity, and the opposite is, of course, also true. So the more mature we are, and I think, if you look for relationships, the thing that's going to make relationships work the best is being in a relationship with an adult. And this is such an important part of being an adult, being able to own your mistakes. I've got a thing on my wall that says, a mistake is not a mistake until you refuse to correct it.
Sure. Again, it's just feedback, right? Even mistakes are feedback. You're going in the wrong direction. Okay, well, you kind of see that, and what are you going to get? So if you keep going in that direction, so if I would have gone in the direction of I just didn't have time, that would have been, even if it wasn't at that time, at some point in the future, there's going to see some feedback that's going to be, well, you're not trustworthy. You don't do what you say you're going to do. And then that's going to create another problem. So instead of going down that route and succumbing to the fear the trigger was the fear that came up, I said, okay, I'm not going to succumb to this. I'm going to course correct. So it was feedback. I course corrected, and that's just, it's a constant thing. And so for, again, Eckhart Tolle talks about being the observer of what's going on in our body and in our mind. So if we're just doing that throughout the day, then we're observing what our reactions are, what our emotions are coming up, and it's not easy, right? It doesn't happen, but you get it's a skill. You build it and you build it and you build it. Oh man, I'm telling you, like what I said in that quote, your life becomes much richer, because then you can see how mistakes like that can actually be an opportunity. And then it doesn't take the big mistakes like a divorce or a bankruptcy or an accident or something really big and tragic and difficult and challenging to wake you up. You can do those little ones and then actually use them to just build this foundation of something bigger and bigger and better.
Now, what you've just described there, that is actually what we call mindful living.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
being aware. It's not wearing long robes or going to sit cross-legged in India or Nepal or somewhere. It is being present in your life day after day and becoming mindful about what's my reaction, what do I want to do about it, how do I handle it better, what works better for me, do I still want to be on the automatic? That's mindfulness.
Yeah, absolutely. I laugh when you talk about being a monk. I wish God would have, like, that would have been my calling here, because that would be so much more peaceful and easy to just go sit on a rock somewhere in Nepal and live in a cave. But we have kids, we have jobs, we have busy lives and whatnot. So that's a little more challenging. So I think that we are in a much more difficult testing ground for this than, say, a monk or somebody that has been called to that life. Nothing against the mindfulness that they do, but ours is,
no, we've got nothing against that.
Yeah, with more of these distractions and challenges, and literally we can be distracted from the second that we wake up to the second that we go to sleep every single day, if we chose to, between our phones and the screens and the media and everything else, if we wanted to. So being mindful of how you're conducting your life, and the first step of that is tuning into your thoughts and what's going on in your body. So you're absolutely positively right about that. And once we start doing that, everything kind of slows down a little bit. So this pace of the world that we get caught up in, if we can slow it down and think about it in our mind, and slow down what our reactions are and our behaviors are to the emotions that we're having. Again, all of our choices are a reaction to our behaviors, so our reaction to our emotions. So if we can slow that down, then we're a lot more intentional about how we're living our lives. And that's where then it just builds and builds and builds. Think about if you're intentional, and look, I'm nowhere near proficient at this, but think about if you could live your life in a way that you are intentional about what you're doing every minute of the day. Can you imagine what you're accomplishing, what you're doing, the impact you're having, the joy that you're feeling, the love that is emanating from you and that you feel inside of yourself? It would be absolutely glorious.
I think that's what I call grace. When you get to that stage where you actually experience that equilibrium, that balance, that you are present and you understand. Even when stuff happens, you can go back to being calm and centered, because you can be in the middle of a shitstorm and it's fine,
Right.
because you know how to get back to your calm center.
Right.
Our problem is that way before we get there, we are dealing with this entire world of distraction, and that's our normal, to be dealing with a world of distraction. And we do that, I think, in a very big way. First of all, because we were not taught these skills. Right? There's no school for these. Well, they are. You teach them, I teach them. There are some people who teach these skills now, but we were not brought up with it. And I think the second big problem is that a lot of people believe their thoughts. A lot of people don't understand that we are not our thoughts. We are not our belief systems. Once we wake up, we're completely in charge of changing our thoughts and our belief systems. I just want to say hi, Indrani. Thank you for the like. Appreciate that. Guys, keep on. Please remember, give us some hearts. We love some hearts. And remember to comment and ask questions. We're going to go check out and see if we have any questions or comments just now. Okay, so go with that one. I know you're dying to
I am dying, because that is a phenomenal point. And this gets a little bit deeper into the feelings and emotions that we have. And you're exactly right. So these feelings that we have are developed from our emotions. So the emotions are the initial reaction we have. The feelings are what we've done to process those emotions, right? And then we come to determine what feelings we have about whatever they are. But if we've had those in our childhood developed to protect us in some manner, that's not necessarily the same as when you're an adult and you're experiencing this in another context. So our feelings are not always an accurate indication of what's going on. And an example of that is one that I love is we might be in a relationship and we might be sending a text to somebody and they don't respond back to us. And then we start getting this thought like, oh no, they don't love us, or, oh, are they out with somebody else? Are they cheating on us? And like, then we start having this whole consciousness of thought around why somebody didn't text us back in a certain period of time that we predetermined was necessary for them to do that. And so then we start getting in our heads and, well, I'm going to break up with them, or I'm going to, get on them. And why don't you respond? And then we talk to them and we find out that they left their phone at home. Right. And so so these feelings that we have were not an accurate indicator. It was all of us projecting all of our feelings because we want to protect ourselves, right? Maybe that was fear-based, that, oh, we've been abandoned before, we've been cheated on before. And so these feelings aren't always accurate. So that's why it's incredibly important to pay attention to what it is that's coming up, and then take the time. So you're talking about, your feelings aren't always accurate. So then you need to then assess what that was, and then have the conversation around it. And then that's the next step, right? So, that becomes a little trickier, because then you're talking to the other person, and hopefully you have a way in which you can do that, a framework in which you can have a productive conversation around what you were feeling and what the situation was and what your needs are, and how you felt about the situation and how you would like to go forward. And maybe nonviolent communication is a great way to do that, because it's a structure for being able to have a productive conversation and take the emotion out of it. Just talk about what your feeling was, and the situation was, and what your feeling was, and what your needs are, and how you'd like to move forward. And then the other person can respond to that. So, and what meshes out of that is oftentimes your feelings were not accurate on the situation. And here's the funny thing. Can you imagine? So here's the final point I want to make about that. Can you imagine if that situation, you're sitting with a therapist and your therapist is like, oh yeah, break up with them. Oh yeah, they're not responding in a time. Oh yeah, that person's probably cheating on you. But you would fire that therapist in a heartbeat. You'd be like, get out of here. You're an idiot. But but we're listening to all that crap in our head, and like it's a therapist, and then we're just like, oh, okay. Yeah, never mind.
Yes.
We should fire that stupid therapist in our head that's making all that crap up, and say,
such a good point. I love
it. No way, man. You are so off base. So, let's get this under control here.
So what you're saying is we should really get an understanding of projecting our fears onto the situation, and separating that from our beliefs, so that we can form a new outlook, so we can reframe, because we stop believing our projections. And this is a very roundabout way of saying it. So we've got projections, and we need to figure out what is projections, and we have to be willing to stop believing them and putting new thought processes in place, and new actions and new conversations.
Yeah, I think the most basic way we can understand this is our feelings are meant to protect us. Mm-hmm. So we always have these feelings to protect us because of our experiences. And so when we have these feelings, it's meant to protect us, but it may not be protecting us in this particular circumstance, because those feelings are developed from a past history and a past experience. So if we had traumatic or abusive or not even experiences, but it doesn't have to be that severe. Any feeling may not be accurate. So that's why meshing it out, that's why understanding where it's coming from, that's why maybe communicating with somebody about what the circumstances is incredibly important, because they're meant to protect us. And if they're continue to do what they're doing, which is not serving us, say it's an abandonment issue, and you keep running away from whatever it is that you need to be addressing, and that could be professionally, that could be personally, or whatever, then you need to pay attention. Well, this is a feeling that's trying to protect me because I needed to do that when I was younger. I needed to run away and get away from that trauma or abuse or whatever. But now I don't need to because I can't function, because I can't keep a job, or I can't keep a relationship, or I can't even just communicate with somebody, or whatever it might be. Again, they're meant to protect us, but they're not always accurate.
Yes, love it. And so we have to learn to, we have to not bring the past situation into the current situation, but we have to be very present in our lives in order to say, I'm either not the 5-year-old anymore whose parents forgot about me at daycare.
Yeah.
I'm also not the guy anymore who was married to my ex-wife who cheated on me, and the person who's with me now is not my ex-wife. And I can speak up, or I can ask for different things. So we have to be quite aware. So we're back to being aware in your own body and to start noticing what comes up for us. Yeah, we do need quite often a person, a coach or a therapist outside of us to go like, hello, this is a projection. But it is a skill that we can also learn.
Right. And well, if we don't, our bodies are gonna tell us. So that's why it results in sickness, right? And maybe that might be the start, or the next might be an illness or a disease, something that's a little more difficult and challenging that slow us down. It could be an accident. Accidents aren't accidents. There's something to make us pay attention, to slow down, and to really look and understand. So again, our bodies they're conduits to all of this. They're going to continue, and the universe or God or whatever you want to call it is going to continue to prompt you in our humanness and our human forms to be able to pay attention to this. So if we think of it in that manner, just then be kind of, I like to say that we're like questioning. Oh, I wonder what that's about. I wonder why that's coming up. I wonder why I reacted that way. I wonder why I'm feeling this way in my body, or this feels tight, or why my knees are aching, or why my back hurts, or whatever it is. It's all something that is just making you pay attention to what you're supposed to be paying attention to.
Okay, let's talk about one last thing before we finish, because this is, strangely enough, something that not one of the other guys have even touched on. And I'm pretty sure that because you deal a lot with divorced men, that this subject is something that comes up, which is the subject of power plays, of control games, of control and sabotage games. How often do you find that when you talk to guys who are divorced, that this has been a very big part of the negative game going on in the relationship?
Well, so control and sabotage in the context of a romantic relationship is the question that you're asking. Well, I feel like that can manifest in many forms. Oftentimes it manifests again in those adaptive behaviors that then become part of an unhealthy dynamic in a relationship that then I call maladaptive behaviors. And then both parties have equal responsibility about this, and this can show up in codependency. This can show up in maybe some disordered personality, like narcissism or another one. And then there's a dynamic that both parties are trying to get something, and that's usually what the root is. So if somebody is codependent, they're really trying to give something in order to get back, right? That was my experience. I was massively codependent. I was trying to get the love that I wanted and that I needed by giving so much. And oftentimes we talk about that as being okay. And I don't like that conversation. I actually just had a podcast with self-described recovering narcissist, and so we had a great conversation about his narcissism and my codependency, and how narcissism is just one half of that equation, because then the codependent is still in a power play, in a control, in trying to control the situation. The narcissist is trying to control the situation by getting the attention that they need and getting quashing their shame that continues to come up nonstop because they don't feel good enough and they don't feel enough and all of that. So that becomes just an unhealthy dynamic. And it's a nonstop power play. It's a nonstop control, but it's not one that's better or one that's worse. And so if you can then start to see that, and even the codependence, because we get a lot of, oh, I gave so much, but you know what? That's not necessarily better, because you were not allowing the other person to give into the relationship if you're giving too much, because you're trying to get something anyway. So that's a power play, and that's a control issue as well. That's no better than them doing what they were doing and not giving enough and being crappy to you and treating you like crap. So it's a difficult and challenging dynamic. But if you can see that and see what part you bring to it, and that's the thing, again, in divorce, like, now you don't have a choice other than pay attention to this, because it's all falling apart and it's painful and difficult. I work with dads, so it's painful and difficult and challenging for kids. The dynamic changes. There's no real winner unless you're going to take it and you're going to pay attention to what 50% of that unhealthy relational dynamic you brought to it, and then go forward and fix it. And it's not easy. I spent years then just recreating it in another relationship, and then another relationship, and then another one, and going, finally, oh man, there's just one common denominator to all of this failure, and it's me. So what half of it am I bringing to this that I've got to fix, so that I can then attract and recognize that somebody that's healthy, that then we can bring healthy dynamics to a relationship that we can then build a foundation and grow on. So that's where I see it manifesting the most in romantic relationships, is where we have these adaptive behaviors that then become maladaptive, and then we have to pay attention to what they are. And it's often control, trying to get our needs met.
Yes, we all want affirmation. And if we don't get it, we're going to be punishing. And so it really doesn't matter from which side. And codependency is always in play here, because even the person who's got the higher narcissistic score is also part of a codependency, is also a codependent who's also needing the other person to be there to fulfill the other half of a need, you know.
Right.
So I didn't say that well.
Well, and what you describe also in this podcast episode with Jason that I talked about, the self-described recovering narcissist, is he talks about codependency as just a form of narcissism too, which it is. And so it's really interesting to frame it in that perspective, because that makes people go, what? I'm narcissistic too? Because it's got such a negative connotation to it right now.
The problem with narcissism is that the way that it's been thrown around in the last 3 or 4 years, because we all are supposed to be on the narcissistic scale. We're supposed to be, this is a Jungian scale, so we are supposed to be on the scale, and we're supposed to be 4, 5, 6. Right, it's natural. If you are not 4, 5, 6 and you're on 0, you're a doormat. Yep. Walk over me as many times as you want. Jump. Come with muddy boots. I don't care. That's 0 on the narcissistic scale. And 10 is where you have really no regard for anybody else except for your own needs. It's not about that you're trying to do stuff to other people. It's just that you are such a massive bundle of needs that you don't have place for anybody else's needs in your life. Yep. And you can get better once you understand how to validate yourself, so you're not just a bundle of needs anymore. So you can be in recovery. And even that is throwing out there like, it's a narcissist, they did this to you, they can't get better, this is how they are. No. We're all supposed to be 4 to 6. We have to be a healthy narcissistic outlook in order for us to not be doormats, because who the heck wants to be a doormat?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a shame, because what we're doing right now with many people is we're just disregarding anybody that is challenged with that the disordered personality, and that's not really fair to them, and not getting them the help. And talk about empathy, right? Because one of the primary things with people on that spectrum is the inability to feel and experience empathy. And empathy is something that you learn. So empathy is something that you that is not just you just are born with. I mean, maybe some of us to some extent have more of an empathetic nature, but that's really something that's really a skill that's taught and that you need to learn. And so leaving this all these people out that have not learned that skill and that ability is really unfair, and just writing them off and ostracizing them is unfair. And then saying, well, the codependence because they've been abused or they've given so much is okay, and let's help them. Maybe we need to really reconsider how we're talking about this. And you're exactly right with the whole pop culture idea of narcissists, and you get it thrown around all the time and this and that, and it's not healthy, unfortunately.
Abusing the term has been selling lots of books. It has been
it's crazy. My most popular podcasts, some of my most popular podcasts are about and around our narcissism. And it's just crazy.
I have a client who was in mortal fear of the narcissistic other person. And this client have learned to overcome the fear and have become the person that the narcissist is now going to for steadiness and advice, and the fear is gone. So, and that was a very hard road to walk, because there's so much fear there. But when we actually just understand that this is not somebody doing something to you, but you have been playing part in this because you have believed so much about your negative conditioning, your negative adaptive responses, that you've believed this is who you are, but you didn't believe that you were more, and you didn't know how to get to 4, 5, 6 on a narcissistic scale yourself, where you value yourself and you like yourself, which you're supposed to do, and there's nothing wrong with that. And just getting there is enough to take away the fear. So I think we can talk about this for a long time, but it's a really it's a great conversation to have. And I would like you to share your link on Facebook, please, to that conversation that you've had. That would be great if you could do that. Please.
So you can find all of the resources for the Divorced Dadvocate community, and that's the name of the community that I have developed at thedivorcedadvocate.com. There's 2 D's in there, Divorced Dadvocate, thedivorcedadvocate.com. And we've got a podcast, we've got blog pages, we've got workshops, we've got classes, we have private coaching, group coaching, and we've got our membership site that's going to be launching coming up here on November 1st, where there's going to be all kinds of additional resources, including the app that has online courses as well. So you can get that. You can check out the podcast, the public, as well as the membership podcast as well. So thedivorcedadvocate.com. And the other thing I'll say, I've got a great tool. Anybody that is considering divorce, going through a divorce, post-divorce, I've got a divorce quiz that helps you kind of gauge where you're at mentally and emotionally in the divorce process compared to others who have gone through it. And that is at thedivorcequiz.com. It takes about 5 or 10 minutes to go through, and it gives you a really good indicator of what you're doing well, kind of where you're at positively and negatively, or as I was saying, there's no positive or negative, what you're doing well and what you can work on mentally and emotionally as you go through this process. So check that out as well.
And please do post for us that specific podcast, please. I'm a newly converted fan of podcasts. I have only recently, in the last 6 months, really become a super big fan of podcasts. My favorite thing when I drive.
Let me find that here. Real Confessions of a Recovering Narcissist. So here, I'll find that, and you want the URL. So let me grab that for you real quick here.
Okay, so while you're doing that, if anybody has any more comments, you can do them. You can lead them. I'm going to ask everybody, please, to share this because I think we have covered some amazing topics here. Thank you, Jude. That was awesome.
Okay, I just put that in the private chat. Is that where you need it?
Yes. Let me see. I think I can post it.
Can you post it? Because I'm not on the Facebook link with you.
Yeah. Yeah, but we are friends, you know. So you can. I can tag you and. Okay, there we go. So that okay, but this is showing up on YouTube. It's not showing up on Facebook. So this is on YouTube, and then I will hold on to this and I will go and post it on Facebook.
Perfect. It's a great conversation. It's long. It's about an hour and a half. It's probably one of my longest podcasts, but Jason is absolutely remarkable in the fact that he is somebody that you talked about, ostracized about being a narcissist, et cetera, but he's embraced that. He's done the work and he's got some really fantastic insight on the other end of the spectrum from the perspective of somebody who understands their narcissistic behaviors and traits and is doing work and has been successful, has a successful marriage and blended family now. And it's pretty awesome.
I like to give people hope. I like people to know that you
always hope.
Yeah, hope is so important. If you're married to a narcissist, it's not the end of the story. If you're a narcissist yourself, it's not the end of the story. There's hope. There's always hope. It just depends on your willingness to work through it and to work on yourself, not on the other one.
Amen.
Okay, so I'm going to ask everybody who comes in, and I know a lot of people are coming in afterwards also, please comment. If you want to ask either of us a question, just do at and put our names in, and then we can come and we can answer your questions. And please share. This is an amazing conversation. I know how many people will enjoy this. And continue giving us the hearts. We love the hearts, and thank you so much. And thank you, Kathy. Appreciate that heart there. And and so our book is coming out soon, and just keep on watching. We will tell you all about it. And it's going. That book is so good it needs a sequel. So. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. The more men we get talking about this stuff, the more men that we start sharing this with. And look, we need each other to get through this. We are designed to be in relation with each other. And so this polarization that is out there in our society, and that is by some respects feels like it's by design, is unhealthy. So we need to be having these conversations with each other, and men having these conversations with other men. Men learn this stuff from other men, and that's important. Men learn how to be empathetic and to love from other men, and so we need to be having that with each other, having that with our children, having that with our brothers, having that with our husbands and our boyfriends, et cetera, and just continue this dialogue.
Mm-hmm. So well said. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Thank you for everybody who comes and watch the replay. Thank you, Jude. Let's have more conversations. I love it. I love talking to you. Thank you so much for your amazing contribution in this conversation, but also in the book. And thank you. And let me just put my music on. I've got my short little song there. Let me get it ready.
Much appreciated. God bless.
Before I say goodbye to everybody. Thank you so much, and lots of love to everyone, and see you again next week.